We need to bring certainty back because of the importance in the restaurant industry in particular, the importance of that strong workforce that has confidence in their ability to work and support their families, and the employers that are working hard to do the right things to make sure they're complying with the laws and supporting the workforce that's delivering for their guests. In the restaurant industry, 1 in 5 of the members of our workforce was born outside of the U.S. That's not a statement about how many of them are legal or illegal or citizens or otherwise. It's just a number of how many were born outside of the U.S. But that's part of the rich fabric of this industry. It's part of the rich fabric of our country. And it's time to take action and do something in terms of passing real regulatory reform.
How are restaurants going to do in 2026? Hello, I'm Jonathan Mays, Editor-in-Chief of Restaurant Business. And in this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, I speak with Michelle Korsmo, the President and CEO of the National Restaurant Association. We love talking with Michelle every so often, and she, again, does not disappoint. We talked this time about the association's State of the Industry report. The association expects that the food service industry, including restaurants and other food service businesses, will generate nearly $1.6 trillion in sales. We talked to Michelle about that and how this year should be better than 2025. Of course, you probably can't get a whole lot worse. We talk extensively about the industry's profitability or lack thereof. We talk about technology. We talk about menu innovation. We talk about marketing, and we talk about immigration. This is a wonderful conversation with a great guest, so please check it out. Okay, I'm here with Michelle Korsmo. Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, state of the industry, you are projecting a $1.55 trillion food service industry. Talk about that if you could.
Yeah, we're actually excited looking into 2026 with always a little bit of concern. We think that 26 will be cautiously strong for restaurant operators. We think that because we see in past activity that restaurants are really resilient, right? So 25 saw 4.6 nominal sales growth. It was 0.8% in real dollars. So after you take out inflation, menu inflation, price and cost inflation, right, you're looking at that smaller 0.8% real growth. But what we know is restaurant operators continue to be very innovative in how they find efficiencies. So we think that 2026 will be cautiously strong with another 4.8% nominal growth, but anticipating 1.3% in real growth. So a little less inflation.
Right. I mean, I don't know. For most of 25, if I would have looked at 26 and you were going to tell me that you'd have plus 1% real growth, I'd be like, that's all right. Given the state of things, yeah, sure.
Given the state of things, I think a lot of times surviving is winning. I think a lot of restaurant operators will say surviving is winning. And that's really where we were. We added 150,000 jobs in the restaurant industry in 25. We anticipate adding another 100,000 jobs. So being able to have that 1% plus real growth makes a big difference for the workforce. And we've always taken a point of pride of being a really important part of the U.S. workforce. So we're going to keep holding that role.
Right. Now, of course, we're assuming that nothing happens that goes kind of crazy. I mean, that's one of the things that happened like last year, where we just had a couple of issues that just sort of interrupted things. The tariff talk early in the year, which really created some headaches. For consumers really pulled back. You can totally tell if you look at the numbers. Yep. And then the shutdown was bad. I think that government shutdown was worse for the state of the economy than people really appreciate.
It was the length of the shutdown that really made the difference. And, if you look at those areas that have a high concentration of federal government employees, like Washington, D.C. area, where the National Restaurant Association is headquartered, we saw that government shutdown impact right away. But what was interesting is how that long term, so going 45 days in a shutdown, you saw the impact of that spread across the country in a real way after the first couple of weeks of the shutdown. And so the dangerous thing is the length of the shutdown. And, Congress has not gotten better at doing funding through regular order. And until that process starts, we're gonna see this. And it's a message that we share when we go to Capitol Hill, because we're talking to congressmen and lawmakers all the time. And one of the things we say is, we understand what you're doing, but at the end of the day, there is a real impact on people's jobs and their ability to make money and think that tomorrow is going to be stronger than today. So we always want them to try to balance making a point and trying to get policy changes and inflicting pain on the American consumer.
Yeah, well, it was as it was said, it was a really difficult
It's tough.
yeah, it was a difficult
Yep.
period for a lot of restaurants. Created some real challenges. Speaking of challenges, one number that popped out to me on the state of the industry is 42% of operators saying were not profit. Only 42% said they were profitable. 42% said they were profitable. That's
42% said they were not profitable.
They
So
were
back
not
there, the
profitable.
first way you said it was right.
Right.
42% said that they were not profitable in 2025. And, one of the things I think about that number too, and really wondering kind of how you're considering profitability, because how do you keep going, right, as a business if you're not profitable at that level? And that number is higher than what we normally see. We normally see a small percentage of restaurants that are always saying that they're not profitable, but that number creeping up to 42% is real. And it's the menu price inflation, it's the uncertainty of the tariffs. You just brought up tariffs and whether or not 26 is a pretty normal, stable year. We're not actually anticipating it to be a normal, stable year. We know that we are going to have a year of disruption. We're in the process now. Congress is working on authority that the president has for tariffs. We know we're going into the renegotiation of USMCA. And so we've got some really important milestone points where we have to keep strong trade flowing through the US, Canada, and Mexico in order to keep those food prices down and menu prices down for consumers.
So you hopeful that the Canadian tariffs in particular are going to be pulled back?
Yes, actually, we are hopeful that that is going to happen and that it's going to stick. The tough thing about the Canadian tariffs is we've had such a strong relationship between our countries for such an extended period of time. And we're in a point right now where all of this feels kind of personal, right? Feels kind of personal to the Canadians, and it's impacted their economy and it's impacted our economy. And so we know that the importance of that relationship staying strong is in both of our countries' best long-term interests. And we think that that's overwhelmingly the position that policymakers have. And so the elimination of those Canadian tariffs long-term will be good. And we think it's going to stick right now. If I can feel optimistic about anything today.
Oh, well, that's good. Being optimistic is good,
Yeah.
I think, especially these days. So now, do you have any sense about the impact of we have no tax on tips. There are some real financial, I guess, tax breaks, or I guess consumers are going to start seeing higher tax returns. You're going to have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Do you have a sense that how much of an impact that's going to have on restaurants?
Yeah, we're actually excited. We're doing a lot of survey work and research on that right now, because most of the taxation tables were not modified in 2025. And so people are going to see that impact in what they hopefully are getting in 25 tax refunds that will be coming through here in the first quarter of 26. And then we know that those new tax tables have been created for the 2026 tax year. So there should be a situation where both with tips and with overtime, the workforce is seeing more take-home pay, and that's always a positive thing, right? The more money that you see in your check, the more take-home pay, the more optimism you feel about being able to afford life expenses and then do that thing that we want everybody to do and take those discretionary dollars and go and eat at restaurants.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you do when you have situation when consumers get money, especially
Yeah, they
lower,
spend it.
they
Yeah,
spend it.
in great
Um,
ways, right? So that's a good thing because spending money in restaurants is good for the economy, and we always think it's good for the soul, good for
yeah,
communities.
that's right. People should
Mhm.
spend money at restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it keeps the business going. It's pretty important. Now, the fact of the matter is, though, I mean, like if you look at last year, they actually did spend at restaurants. It's one of the big misnomers is that consumers haven't been spending at restaurants. They are. They're spending 53% of their food dollars going to restaurants. That's actually higher than pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see how what restaurants mean to consumers has changed over time. Jonathan, you and I are probably about the same age, I'm guessing, or somewhere close. You might be younger than I am. But restaurants used to be an occasion, a big activity. Like it was not an everyday kind of thing. The way that my parents viewed us going to restaurants is very different than the way I view taking my family to restaurants. Like on Saturdays when we had sports activities and dance activities, we were begging mom to go to our local quick service restaurant that we wanted to have for lunch. And she was always, saying, no, we're going to go home and have lunch. We'll have sandwiches. And it was a treat to go out to restaurants. And now it's so much a part of people's lifestyle. In fact, we see that 61% of adults say that restaurants are an essential part of their lifestyle. Even if I wasn't in that job, restaurants would be an essential part of my family's lifestyle because of everything people have going on and all of the stress of what you're trying to do. The restaurants that are able to prepare wonderful meals for us and let us take time to sit and talk to each other and just focus on that reconnection point at the end of the day is a wonderful gift. Or being able to pick up and bring home restaurants, because as we see in a post-pandemic environment, that off-premise dining continues to increase. So that way that the consumer views restaurants as an essential part of their lifestyle continues to push up. Like I said, 61% of Americans are saying it's essential, and
Yeah.
I'm in that number.
Oh yeah. Well, me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But like, I mean, I mean, people love restaurants. That's kind of what's great about the business. They love restaurants. They love going out to eat at restaurants, and it is more recession proof, I think, than people fully appreciate. Now, it's also saturated, and so it's kind of, my thoughts is it tends to be more it is more influenced by modest changes in the economy or in consumer spending patterns and that kind of thing. And that's roughly, to me, what I think what we've seen the last couple of years, because it really is roughly saturated. We
Well,
have
what
a lot of
Well,
restaurants.
but what's interesting about restaurants and restaurant competition is when you think about it, it's not a binary choice for your consumer. They're not only going to one restaurant and not going to another restaurant, right? You do make changes in quick service, family dining, full service, fine dining, like all of those different kind of um, restaurants are a part of everyone's repertoire, right? I shouldn't say everyone, but for most people, you've got a pretty good variety. And so it's really that question of occasion and the choice again about restaurant or eating at home grocery choices. And so I think that as the industry continues to really do great things in terms of how they're serving consumers. I love what's happening in marketing with restaurants right now and the way they're getting so much better at talking to consumers in a meaningful way that's bringing them in and connecting them. And so when you think about what you would say is saturated, I say is a big, robust market that has to get better at helping consumers understand why my restaurant, right? Why my restaurant over another restaurant? Like, what are you looking for today? Do I want to go to an elevated quick service restaurant for a family dinner, or do I want to go to a family dining location? And you see that again, like I said, in the marketing with restaurants. I love how restaurants have gotten in on this certainty in the way that they're marketing, right? Being able to provide price certainty for what you're going to get at what price levels, I think are really driving a lot of consumer uptake.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, I think restaurants today are far more innovative than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And the marketing thing is just, I mean, we just like in December, Burger King does a SpongeBob meal and it went crazy, and that's sort of lifted its sales after, a kind of a sluggish recovery for them. And they're seeing some real momentum. And then you had McDonald's that had its highest single sales day in its history because it gave away socks. And for a week, it was the biggest seller of socks in the world, which is mind blowing. Because
Talking
it was
about
giving away
flex
socks.
and the brand, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And so, like, I mean, I think, they've upped their game on marketing. You got a lot of limited time offers. You got some real creative use of social media. You've got all sorts of things. And I mean, at the end of the day, though, it was still, with all that, it was a low traffic environment. According to your study, more than 6 in 10 restaurants said that they lost traffic.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, when you look at our growth that we worry about is that growth isn't coming from traffic increases. That growth is coming from menu price increases. So, long term, that's not positive, not sustainable. And that really needs to reverse. But again, we were just talking about the ways that restaurants are getting much better about bringing people in, and all of that, again, around that kind of what's the value, what's the certainty of what I'm getting in that experience, I think will come to find how we solve these problems. And, when we say cautiously strong, within the association, we're really focused on what can restaurants do to unleash breakthrough efficiency, and what can restaurants do to empower a future ready workforce. So much of this is driven with technology and how restaurants are getting smart at using technology to find those efficiencies and then to make a better experience for their workforce and allow that workforce to stay highly trained, highly skilled, really competent. And so in those spaces, we're going to be able to improve the way that those margins are more traffic driven, volume driven than they are just price driven.
Yeah. Well, we do see, I mean, like your study, I mean, you mentioned technology, and like 60 some percent of operators want to boost their tech spending this year.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, I mean, um, it's, you see the obvious reasons. I mean, technology is the way to, I mean, consumers like it. They're more accustomed to it. I mean, like, again, just the ordering channels today is just completely different than what it was even 4 years ago coming out of the
Right.
pandemic.
Right.
So you see restaurants really eager to give consumers what they want when it comes to technology, but also that helps them on the cost side.
Yeah, it helps them on the cost side, and then it's also thinking about how are we balancing that technology with the great aspect of hospitality. The consumers, the desire by operators to spend and invest more in technology is good, but how do you make sure that you're spending your technology dollars wisely, that are really getting that right return? We talk about it in terms of a high tech, high touch environment, right? So hospitality works really well when you keep that high touch in it. But how do you bring that high tech to get, um, you know, higher check averages, higher accuracy orders, speed, all of those things that make a difference, and then marketing insights. So there's a lot of really good innovation that I think is coming, and we're getting better at, as the newer technologies are starting to mature, we're getting better at understanding the use cases that make the most sense for those technology pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. I want to get back to this profitability thing.
Mhm.
Because this is a finance
At the end
podcast
of the
technically,
day,
and
right?
profitability is important.
Yeah.
These businesses. So like I don't know, we've talked before. I mean, the industry is not, for much of the restaurant industry, it is a low profit business. Most restaurants are probably a week or a month or two away from a bad month or two away from going out of business,
Yep. Yep.
which is a crucial situation in my market in Minneapolis. How do you impress upon on Congress and political leaders about how sensitive restaurants are to the cost environment.
Yeah. So average restaurant profitability is between 3 and 5%. And what we're actually seeing in 2025, that profitability was about 2.5 to 4%. And so we're on the low end of what restaurant profitability is because of that squeeze. And because restaurants know, yeah, they can take menu price, but only so much. And the consumer behavior makes a difference, back to the conversation about fewer guest counts. And so we're constantly chatting with Congress about policies that make a difference. The Working Families Tax Cut and Jobs Act was a significant piece of getting a lot of the tax policy right that helps restaurant operations, being able to fully expense interest, the bonus depreciation. Those things allow for the investments they're making to be more affordable investments that really return on the business profitability. Obviously, we talked about no tax on tips on overtime for the workforce, but then there's other things like just operational expenses. And the biggest operational expense that restaurants don't have control over is their credit card swipe fees. And we tell this story over and over again. And it's a tough one because, the banks love those swipe fees. They're making a lot of money on those swipe fees. So they're going to invest a lot of money in protecting those swipe fees. But at the end of the day, there isn't competition in that market among anybody other than the biggest of brands. And so there's nobody out there that can get in to offer a lower rate. And so we're just really pushing Congress on bringing competition in and let competition do its job of getting a market price for swipe fees that is driven by a lower cost operator being able to come in. And so that would be huge. We're about to go into our public affairs conference here in Washington, D.C. in a couple of weeks, where we bring over 600 great restaurant operators to the Capitol, and we spend time talking with Congress about what's going on in the industry and how the policies they're making are impacting our businesses. Operators do such a great job of telling that story with their real life examples of the equipment that they're now investing in, because they can do that full depreciation on that equipment. And then we talk about what the real numbers are in their P&L on swipe fees and how they've got to get past the politics of it and really look at bringing competition into the marketplace.
More than 8 in 10 operators said that these fees are really creating problems for them.
That's right. That's right.
And I mean, it's a significant issue.
Yeah,
Also a problem.
they've increased 70% since COVID.
Really?
So food prices, menu prices about 35% since COVID. Swipe fees 70% increase since COVID.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if you look at the industry, like so many different profitability challenges. I mean, if you want to know why, if people want to know why menu prices are increasing, and people, like, I hear it all the time. I'm on social media, and almost always, no matter what chain I actually talk about, somebody is going to mention pricing. It's too expensive. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason. I mean, it's like you got labor costs are up. You got food costs are up. Many burger chains and steak chains are dealing with really high beef costs.
Beef prices, right.
Yeah.
Right.
You
All
have
those costs are up.
construction costs. So we heard this week that you're seeing some delays in construction or in remodels at Burger King because the cost of construction continues to increase. You have insurance costs. Insurance costs are absolutely through the roof. Now, that's not just a restaurant problem. That's an everybody problem.
That's an everybody problem. Insurance costs are through the roof, just the operating insurance, and then the health insurance costs are through the roof. And so all of those things are compounding. Back to, your first question and the most important question, and that's the profitability question, because that profitability question is a health conversation. How healthy and strong is the industry? And this is where Congress and the regulatory environment adds to the pain points that are increasing these costs. And this is where they've got to do their job of providing more certainty and providing an opportunity for stopping predatory behavior, but keeping the regulatory environment stable and letting businesses do their work.
Speaking of Congress, we talked last year at the show, and you expressed some confidence in immigration reform. That has not happened yet. And in
I'm
fact,
such an
the opposite.
optimistic person, Jonathan.
I appreciate your sunny side up
Yeah.
disposition. That is refreshing for someone like me who looks around corners and sees boogeymen everywhere.
Yeah.
Since we last talked, I mean, it's frankly gone in the other direction. Is there
Gone in the
any?
other direction, right? It really has. And we've got some real issues that we have to deal with as a nation, and how we view immigration and how we view immigrants as part of the fabric of our country, and how we view immigration enforcement. I mean, we talk about your home state of Minnesota. Obviously, you have been ground zero in what is going on there. And at the end of the day, we know that bad actors are bad actors and should be addressed. I think everybody can agree with that. But immigration has long been an important part of the American story. It is our American story. And as we're in our semi-quincentennial, I think it's a good time to remember what it means to be an American. We are a melting pot of people that come in here to build lives and careers and restaurants, and make places where tomorrow can be better than today. And we need a system that allows people better vehicles and opportunities to do that in a way that they can have confidence in their status as contributors to our economy, and the work that they do to help bring growth and vibrancy to who we are as a country. And I think that when we look at what's happening with immigration, we're not talking enough about how we find the right pathways for people who are coming in and contributing, and how are we addressing the challenges of people that were on temporary protective status or dreamers, that were here under a regulatory structure that has disappeared for them in this point. And we need to bring certainty back, because of the importance in the restaurant industry, in particular, the importance of that strong workforce that has confidence in their ability to work and support their families, and the employers that are working hard to do the right things, to make sure they're complying with the laws and supporting the workforce that's delivering for their guests. In the restaurant industry, 1 in 5 of the members of our workforce was born outside of the U.S. That's not a statement about how many of them are legal or illegal or citizens or otherwise. It's just a number of how many were born outside of the U.S. But that's part of the rich fabric of this industry. It's part of the rich fabric of our country. And it's time to take action and do something in terms of passing real regulatory reform.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I say again, the industry is saturated. It needs people. It needs
Needs
people
people.
to work, needs people to buy. And and it's not just the restaurant employee, by the way. About a quarter of workers in various food process, in
Yep.
agriculture and in food
Yep.
processing are also immigrants.
Chain.
And the supply chain, and we just went through a situation of what happens when we have a labor shortage, and Technomic is projecting a challenge in finding workers over the next couple of years. So this is a real challenge, and we talk about restaurants being unprofitable or having thin profits.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to add another headache and potentially higher menu prices. It's an issue.
Yeah. No, these are the challenges that we're talking about. It is immigration is the center point of the conversation that we're having at our public affairs conference in Washington, D.C. next month. It's immigration, tariffs and trade, and credit card swipe fees, all things that are going directly to the heart of what helps restaurants find profitability.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can't end on that depressing note. But you're expecting a better year this year.
We're expecting a better year. A couple of things that we look at too are food trends. So if you want to talk about something a little bit more positive, it's always fun to think about food trends. Not necessarily the economic piece of the state of the industry, but people continue to lean into comfort foods with all that's going on there's something about a nice, comforting meatloaf that really brings people home. So comfort foods remain high. And then there's still an expansion for global cuisine, right? There's that desire for global cuisine in our restaurant marketplace. So like to see the variety, like to see the touch point in comfort foods. 2026, we got a lot of work ahead of us, but as always, restaurant operators are the most resilient, most optimistic people that I've ever met. And it's a joy to do this work for them to try to make the business environment for restaurants stronger.
Awesome. Michelle, this was fantastic. Really appreciate you joining me again on the podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. Always nice to be with you.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. But by all means, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcast producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.